Rahim. Nahmaduhu nusalli ala Rasulil Kareem. Respected viewers, brothers, sisters, welcome back to Real Talk, where we talk about real issues with more than real people. More importantly, professors, doctors, sirs, knighted people, and OBE people. Today, in our midst, we have, as always, Sir Iqbal Bana. I call him Sir Iqbal Bana, as an elderly, respected gentleman. However, more importantly, we've got Professor Lord Patel of Bradford. Before the short break we were talking about the Ashes, the cricket, and etc., etc. But moving on from there, we talked about drugs and criminality. One of Professor or Doctor's many research papers and theories and things that he's done work on. And we were talking about drugs, and we alluded to a subject about Asian communities burying their heads in the sand and not coming out in the open. And we were talking about this in the break. So, Iqbal Bhai, if you may just elaborate on that and something in terms of what we must do in terms of proactiveness.
Well, I think we have to recognize that there is an issue within our communities, both in terms of drug taking and dealing in drugs as well. And I think that is of great concern. And again, the economy of the economies of scale, where people feel that dealing in drugs, supplying drugs is easy money, is driving people into that industry, and it is of great concern. It's what is happening to our young people in places like Bradford and other towns and cities. And I think as communities, at a senior leadership level, we need to take this issue much more seriously than we have hitherto. And I think, we had Mr. Rafiq Mughal Sehgal Sahib here a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about, how some of the Imams are slightly reluctant to talk about some of these issues. And I just wonder why. Why is it that Imams, who in my view have a spiritual and a moral duty to campaign against these issues, are finding themselves reluctant to try and talk about this in their Friday prayers or sermons, or whatever it is that they have, programs that they have in their masjids. And I think that is, in my view, a serious dereliction of duty of the Imams.
I'll come back to that and give you an answer.
I know you're a mufti, so you probably won't.
But I want to hear Professor Lord Patel's or Kamlesh Bhai's ideas or thoughts on this, and suggestions how we can tackle this.
Firstly, I completely agree with Iqbal. This was an issue I found in the 80s and 90s, where I desperately wanted to work not only with mosques but gurudwaras and Hindu temples to say, I need you to be on board and understand this is an issue. Hiding it won't deal with it. It just won't, because it's not just the children. The parents were making decisions based on shame, stigma, discrimination, sending people back home, or hiding things, saying, the son's had a heart attack when he's actually in a detox unit,
right? And
they're spending their money, which is actually stopping government developing services, because government was saying Asian communities don't have drug problems, so we're not going to invest any money, we're not going to provide any education, prevention or treatment services. Community is saying it's not a problem, so as Iqbal said, then it allows not only people who have a drug problem suffer, but it allows the criminal market to grow. And the criminal market, so you can deal with it, and everybody hides it. So one day you're in prison, but the next day you're driving down in a nice car, paying for the wedding, and nobody questions it.
Wow. You've raised such a point that I think maybe our viewers may have missed, which is government not putting money into education, prevention and services, because we Asians don't have a problem. Before I counter some of the Imams and Maulvi bashing, we've got a caller waiting who's eagerly waiting to speak to us. So let's see who the caller is. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Just a few points. Admittedly, obviously all drugs are bad, but alcohol does far more damage than any other drug out there. So you're having this in this society, in the Western society, it's like a duplicity of thought. Hang on a minute, alcohol is okay, but it gets you high. Drugs are wrong, but they get you high. Both are wrong. And when it comes to education, I mean, education for things that are, well, if you're Muslim, where's the education involved? You know it's wrong. There's no excuse. What do you need to be educated over? I mean, these things are just a moral issue. I mean, you can't say to the vast majority of people that are locked up today through drugs or making money out of drugs that they need educating. They don't need educating. If they have any idea between what is right and wrong, that is enough. Okay,
thank you very much for your call. We'll discuss that and maybe address that, and something that's one of our viewers has raised. But
which is correct.
He's
absolutely right.
But I may well disagree with something both of you have said. I say you, Iqbal Bhai, in terms of, I've had this discussion with the Council of Mosques, Rafiq Segal, and etc., and Imams as well. And being an Imam myself and leading prayers and etc., how much do us Imams or Maulvis and Muftis and whoever's leading sermon are expected to do? 1 minute you're asked to lead a sermon and countering some of the radical hate and thoughts and etc. Next minute you've got to address something to do with drugs. 1 minute, hold on, the Imams will say, we're here, we're providing a service, our main and primary role is to talk about Allah, the Creator, the Prophets, and Islam and Deen. That's our main, and saving the Iman of, yes, these are secondary issues, not to say it's not important, and not to say they shouldn't be doing it, to a certain degree. However,
well, can I counter that?
1 minute, we can have a, we've got something, and something the viewer or the caller has raised is, it is, and it's about a moral duty and understanding. Yeah, vast majority of the Muslims will know that drugs and alcohol is is haram or forbidden, etc., etc. But then again, the prisons are full of Muslims who are committing these kind of crimes. It's not about education, maybe sometimes in terms of what Kamlesh Bhai has raised, in terms of prevention, in terms of services, in terms of other issues that need to be highlighted.
Prevention, as far as a Muslim, and picking up on the point the brother said, we should not have a prevention program. Islam prevents it in the first instance. And if an Imam says that my role is to pray namaz, lead namaz, and just talk about the Prophet ﷺ in his life and forget about everything else that
which is all encompassing.
Yeah, to me, that in itself is a dereliction of duty.
Okay.
An Imam needs to look at what is happening in their community, look at the realities of what is going on in their community, and also talk about that within the context of Islam. Not to isolate Imams themselves from just talking
just
about,
being the devil's advocate here,
just
by the
to
way.
talk about, ye sunnah zinda karo, is tarah namaz padho, that's all. I think that is where Imams, and this is what the reason I'm picking this up on, Rafiq Segal, who sat here, former chair of the Council of Mosque, and he said this, and I was surprised when he said it, that some of the Imams are a bit reluctant to talk about some of these issues. So if you go back to the brother's point, anybody who professes to be a Muslim, they automatically, by the very faith that they say that they belong to, would not be engaged in alcohol or any of these drug activities or any other criminal activities. Unfortunately, we are all fallible, and some more than others.
I would say, before our Kamlesh Bhai and he comes in, I would say this, that it's being an interfaith person, being on the Yorkshire and Humber Regional Forum with the bishops and the rabbis and priests, etc., for a number of years, 5 years actually, most faiths would say this, that self-harm, self-destruction, drugs, alcohol, all these things would not sit well or would be forbidden in their respective faiths. However, regardless of faith, creed, colour and background, we still have a problem in our communities.
Exactly.
How do you address that, Kamlesh Bhai? Sorry, you can address anything you want.
No, and firstly, look, the biggest killer of people is tobacco. Then it's alcohol related, because it's not just drinking alcohol that causes a problem, but it's the accidents that come from it. It's the violence that stems from it. And then, of course, illegal drugs cost society a fortune, because in order to get £100 for illegal drugs, you have £1,000 worth of crime. So, you know, it costs billions. So all important. I completely agree with our listener there. And yeah, it's difficult to say it's an imam's responsibility in this. It has to be the community who really opens up. And unless we're prepared to say these are all issues, and we have to talk about how young girls are treated, how women are treated, you know, and how you deal with drug, it's going to happen. You know, it's irrelevant what faith you are. All faiths don't want it to happen, but young people get involved, they experiment, they get involved in all sorts of things. Faith does keep people on track. Whether you're Muslim or Christian, I've seen it work in lots of places. You know, faith is an answer to some people, but not everybody. Once you're in that spiral, how to get out of it. Faith can give you the light that takes you away. But, you know, if you don't have a roof over your head, if you don't have a family who loves you, if you haven't got a good education or a job, some really basic things, then the alternatives are what we see. And this is where faith can play a part to bring some of those things there.
Okay, I mean, both of you have done work in the prison service and crime especially related, and you've done some research on crime and mental health and public health as well. Many of your degrees and diplomas that you hold. However, what is the most important thing to you in terms of South Asian communities? And I'm just saying this for our viewers, because our background and our viewers mainly will be from there. Not to say they're not, but more importantly, your area of criminality and crime. What would you advise our viewers on that area, and what to watch out for, telltale signs, and what we can do, being proactive as a community, as a society, whether they're imams, whether they're community leaders, whether they're mums and dads at home. What's the most worrying statistics and facts for you?
The most worrying facts, as I mentioned before, the prison population has doubled in the last 30 years. So we lock up more people than anywhere else in Europe. So a quarter of that adult prison population has always been black or Asian. Predominantly black, increasingly Asian. You know, about 28%.
A quarter?
A quarter, 25%.
Wow.
About 28% women. So it's been more there. In the last 10 years, the juvenile, i.e. young offenders, has actually dropped. The population has dropped because of very strong police action not to try and arrest young people, because of lots of schemes to reduce that young offenders institution, which is excellent news, except for the fact that the young offenders institution has dropped 60% for white people and gone up for black and Asian people. So it's 42% of all young offenders institution in this country is either black or Asian.
Wow.
That's worse than America. So, and you know, the Asian population figures are increasing rapidly. And they're not, you know, the Muslim population, when you look in prisons, they're not there of terror-related charges. 1 or 2%. Iqbal would know better than me. But
we've had a caller, and who doesn't want to speak to us publicly, but asked a question, posed a question to both of us, or all of us, should I say, is what if we were to legalize drugs? Places like the Netherlands, where heroin use is, you know, was maybe up here, and it's gone really down, maybe to 1% or something less, and similarly like other countries in Europe.
Yeah.
What do you say to that? And those, maybe you've had these discussions with policymakers in Whitehall or anywhere else in terms of categorization and decriminalization.
It's a constant debate. So this, you know, it's a very good question. England, the UK, has the best evidence in terms of tackling drug use and misuse anywhere in the world. if you've got evidence, that's what you should base your policies on and your politics on. We don't do that because the public, the media, don't want any government to be soft on drugs. So for the last 30 years that I've been involved with working with drug issues, the evidence base is not used. Like you said, in Amsterdam, you know, it was one of the biggest heroin areas in Europe. Since they legalised cannabis and legalised, you know, people to take it in a safe environment, it reduced it completely. I'm not sure it's ever going to happen here. There's lots of arguments to say you either decriminalise some aspects of it or you completely legalise it, which is very difficult because it's a worldwide issue. So what do? Decriminalise heroin and then they bring synthetic drugs and then you know, blanket bans on things don't work. We had a blanket ban on alcohol, didn't work in America.
Yes.
We had, well, Ireland did a blanket ban on new psychotic substances. The use doubled after we banned it. We've just banned it now. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this country. We banned it last year because it's the only way to do it. It's the only thing that the public want to hear.
Okay. Iqbal Bhai, in last 30 seconds or a minute that we've got left, what do you have to say to that?
I mean, I agree with Kamlesh. I mean, we live in a very conservative area in terms of the population of this country, and there's huge reluctance to sort of ban or sort of decriminalize or make legal drugs, and I can understand that. Personally, my view would be I don't think we should be decriminalizing them or legalizing them. I think what we should be doing is putting more money and effort and energy into educating people against the use of alcohol, drugs, etc., which interferes with people's minds. And Islam is very clear on this. You will not take any substance which will affect your thoughts in any shape or form. So, you know, that is the rule we should apply in our lives. And I think the problem here is that when we have people who are not applying those rules and they're using these drugs to make other people's lives a misery, then we as a community, we should be taking charge of these issues and saying, what can we do to stop this happening within our own communities? And unless we do that, we'll have we have a time bomb on our hands.
Absolutely.
Okay. Both of you, Professor Lord Patel of Bradford and Sir Iqbal Bana of Batley, thank you very much for coming and giving such insight into some of the things we've discussed. We must have you both back again, especially you, Professor Lord Patel.
You got a master here.
Well,
no,
I didn't know we had such gems in our community, but I've found some. So viewers, brothers, sisters, thank you for all watching and Real Talk, IQRA TV. We'll be back with you same time next week with me, your host, Yusuf Akoudi, on Real Talk 6 while 7 every Wednesday. Stay with us, stay tuned, and see you all next week. From here, from Bradford, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.